When you take a look at the college football slate, there are some weird matchups for this weekend, and they're weird in that you forget that some of them are now Power 5 versus Power 5 matchups. And I wonder just how long it takes for it to feel natural that BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, UCF are in Power 5 conferences. And if you forget, or if that's just a me thing. The other day when we were talking about what does a group of 5 school have to do to be ranked, because none of the 25 slots are occupied by group of 5 schools, but I think 3 of the spots between 25 and 30 were. In reality, it's 2 because BYU is now in a Power 5 conference. But I forgot that. And that's the thing that I think is interesting, is that how long does it take for it to feel like, oh yeah, they're a Power 5 school. They're on the same level as Alabama, Texas, USC, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. Because it feels like a while for some schools. For instance, has Rutgers ever felt like a Power 5 school to you? Hasn't to me. And I don't know if/when they will. For instance, Nebraska, when they moved to the Big Ten, is the complete opposite. It doesn't feel weird if you're a Big Ten school and you play Nebraska. You see Nebraska on the schedule, you don't go, wait, is that a non-conference? It feels right. It feels natural. It feels normal. When you see Rutgers on the schedule, is that a conference game? Does that feel right? And I think it's going to be the same way for some schools in the Big 12. Now, I think that's lessened by Texas and Oklahoma leaving. But the question still remains, if on Kansas State's schedule, they look and go, okay, there's Texas Tech, there's Oklahoma State, Iowa State, UCF. Is that? I just wonder how long it takes to feel like that's a natural game that should be played. Like it makes sense. And I think it's the same question for the Big Ten. When do UCLA, USC, Washington, and Oregon, when do they feel like members of the Big Ten? Like it makes sense. This is a natural game that should be played. I don't think the SEC has those questions with Texas and Oklahoma. Maybe Oklahoma a little bit, but as seamlessly as Texas A&M moved into the SEC, I don't think that there's going to be that same feeling with Texas and Oklahoma. I think for some schools, Missouri is still on that list of like, oh, wait, yeah, they're in the conference. That's weird. Similar vein, Colorado in the Pac-12. Does Colorado feel like a natural game for Washington State or Oregon State to play? No. But I'm sure that for a while that Arizona didn't feel like a natural game for Oregon State or Washington State or USC or Arizona State for Cal and Stanford. So what's that barrier? How long does it take? What's that time frame? And I don't know if it's on a case-by-case basis, if it's a school-by-school, because as a guy who likes Ohio State, I can tell you that the first time Ohio State played Nebraska, it wasn't like, this is a big non-conference matchup. It felt like a game that made sense and has since then. Every time Ohio State plays Rutgers, I think, why are we doing that? And that's one of the things that I think should have been a thought process of adding to conferences, conference realignment, conference expansion was, does adding this school seem natural? For Texas and Oklahoma, would they ever schedule a home and home with UCF? And would that game ever be a big time non-conference game? No. The same for Cincinnati, the same for Houston, likely the same for BYU. It's likely the reason why Texas and Oklahoma had larger aspirations than the Big 12. Would Michigan ever be interested in playing Rutgers every year if Jim Delaney 15 years ago didn't say, hey, we're gonna add these guys to the conference? No, probably not. So does that make them a natural fit? No, probably not. Would Wisconsin and Penn State and Ohio State and Michigan State and Iowa have signed up to play USC and UCLA? Yeah. Oregon and Washington? Yeah. I just wonder how long that feeling out process takes. That it doesn't feel like a big non-conference matchup anymore. Because you're going to lose some of that, I think, when these conference changes take place. And some of them, like we mentioned, already have. The fact that, it's a weird schedule for Oklahoma this year where they played on the road at Tulsa, not in the Big 12, out of conference, and then they're playing at Cincinnati and at BYU. And then they're home for UCF, and then Texas is at Houston, and they're home for BYU, and those are conference games. But if you give the schedule just a quick glance over, you don't think, you're like, wow, why are they playing? Like Oklahoma is at Cincinnati on Saturday. Big noon kickoff. And it should be a big atmosphere for Cincinnati, and I don't think it's a coincidence that the Big 12 put Oklahoma and Texas on the road at 3 of the 4 schools that are coming into the conference. I don't think that's a coinky dink. I'm genuinely surprised that neither Oklahoma or Texas are playing at UCF. But Oklahoma's playing at BYU and at Cincinnati, and Texas is playing at Houston. There was a bone thrown there to the new schools coming into the conference. And yet, I'm certain for Texas fans, when they go to play Houston, there will be a like, oh, wait, this is a conference game, isn't it? Like they got the same patch on their shoulder that we do. They got the same logo on the 25-yard line on their field that we do. It feels weird. And I think it's going to feel weird. When I was looking up the UAB schedule yesterday to slam Trent Dilfer for saying that a Saturday night SEC game is a better atmosphere than the Super Bowl, I went to Conference USA. UAB is not in Conference USA anymore. Neither is Charlotte or North Texas or UTSA or Rice. Conference USA now has Jacksonville State, New Mexico State, and Sam Houston State in Liberty. A lot of it doesn't feel natural. And so I don't know when it will be real, but I also wonder, is it a problem? And I think it is to a point, because while college football is somewhat regional to the Midwest, Southeast, and then the West Coast, the knock is they don't care. The Northeast definitely doesn't care. Regionality, I think, still matters and should matter at some level, because you want to see the best teams in a certain area go against one another. Now, I don't think it's outrageous for Florida and Texas to be in the same conference. I don't think it's outrageous for Oregon and Washington to be in the same conference as Rutgers and Maryland. But it's how you decide who plays who and how you get those matchups. Because while nobody wants to admit that there are tiers in conferences, there are tiers in conferences. So you want your tier 1 schools to play your other tier 1 schools as often as possible, both from a competitive standpoint, from a conference standpoint, from a TV standpoint, and from a good for the game standpoint. We spent 120 years of college football avoiding playing the best teams against one another because somebody's feelings might get hurt. To hell with that. If you're going to gobble up all these conferences and put all these power programs in all these massive national brands into one conference, then by God, it's a waste for Texas and Oklahoma to play Vanderbilt and South Carolina every year, and Mississippi State. It's not fun to hear if you're not one of those top tier schools, but it's the truth. You are wasting opportunities if instead of USC playing Michigan and Ohio State and Wisconsin and Penn State and Iowa and Nebraska, they're playing Purdue and Northwestern in Illinois and Indiana. It's not fun to confront that, but that's the reality. That's what we want to see as college football fans. Now, you want to see an upset. You want to see South Carolina beat Oklahoma. You want to see Vanderbilt take down Florida. You want to see Northwestern beat Nebraska. But I don't know how you balance the regionality and the idea that that matters with also, I want to see USC play Ohio State. I want to see Washington play Michigan. I want to see Texas play LSU. I want to see Oklahoma play Alabama. I don't know how you find that balance. And I don't know what the best way forward is. But I think it matters. And that's why I'm glad I'm not the one that has to figure it all out. It's the Daily Huddle on Saturday Glory. I'm Garrett Seawright. Thanks for making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Give us the video a thumbs up. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. If you are listening on the podcast, drop a 5-star review, and we'll read them here on the show. There are, 6 games that feature ranked opponents playing each other, and then Florida State plays Clemson, and you could argue that Clemson probably should be ranked, but since they're not in the SEC and they have a loss, they're not. It's the first big game of the day on Saturday in a big day of college football. Florida State goes on the road to Clemson. So I'm going to give you my picks for the 6 games that feature ranked versus ranked, and then Florida State, Clemson. Florida State at Clemson. Mentioned earlier in the week, big opportunity for Dabo Swinney. Tigers have fallen on hard times. I think they get harder. Florida State wins. I don't know. The Seminoles didn't get any help from the ACC schedule makers that you go back-to-back conference road games where they probably should have lost to Boston College, but they didn't. So you know what? They're still the number 4 team in the country. I think Florida State's still really good. I think Florida State is, if they can get by Clemson, has a somewhat easy road to the college football playoff. And I think you need to mentally prepare yourself for that if you are a FSU hater. But that's the reality of the situation. So give me the Noles on Saturday at Clemson. UCLA plays at Utah. Similar conversation of what we talked about earlier in the week with the coaches who have the chance to flip the script. I don't think Chip Kelly gets it done. I think Utah's pretty good. I don't think that they are college football playoff caliber, but they're in that list of schools who can finish in the 7 through 12 slots in the final college football playoff rankings. And if it was the 12-team playoff this year, I would say, yeah, they're playoff caliber. But they're not when it's just 4. So give me the Utes. The next couple are super, super interesting to me because Colorado is on the road at Oregon. They're number 19. Oregon is number 10. And for all of the love that the Buffaloes have gotten, all the publicity and the notoriety that Deion Sanders has brought that program, they're 3-0. They beat a team that played in the national championship game last year. They beat the brakes off Nebraska, and they went to double overtime at Colorado State. For all the love that they've got, they're still ranked only 19th. And Oregon is a 21-point favorite, which feels like a big number. Regardless of, and if it was last year's Colorado, sure, not enough number. I wonder if the fairy tale continues or if it comes to a screeching halt, because I'm here to tell you that if Oregon has the ability to pummel them. And I think they might. Whoever gets the first crack at shutting them up, and they're going to spend all week telling their players, our mission, our motive, what we are looking to do on Saturday is to shut Colorado up. I am here to tell you that is happening every week that they go without a loss. And it's only going to continue to roll downhill until somebody says, I'm going to wax you. And it's likely to happen. I don't know if it's likely to happen Saturday. I think it might be. But don't be surprised if that turns into a 70-21 game and Oregon keeps their pedal to the metal. Because Colorado going to be leaving the conference. Dan Lanning said in a press conference earlier this year when it was announced that Colorado was leaving, like, what has Colorado meant to the Pac-12? What have they won? Nothing? Okay, cool. I'm just here to tell you that if an ass kicking is possible, an ass kicking is probable in that game. So I'm going to take the Ducks. 21 seems like a lot. But if they can win by 21, they're going to win by 41. That's just my gut feeling on that matchup. That I'm here to tell you, Oregon has spent all week telling their players, yeah, it's been a nice story for Colorado, but it better end on Saturday. And if it doesn't, if Colorado beats Oregon, that snowball's just going to keep rolling downhill. Because I'm here to tell you that somebody, everybody maybe in the conference, doesn't like the way that Colorado is operating. And the first opportunity somebody gets to say, we're going to shut them up, they're going to shut them up. This next game is intriguing as hell to me. Ole Miss, number 15, at number 13, Alabama. I want to say Ole Miss badly. I want to say it. But I don't know that I can bring myself to it. Because while they're number 13, Alabama still has a loss to somebody that was frankly better than them. And I don't know that Crimson Tide fans are handling that well, but that's the reality of the situation. Texas is better than Alabama in 2023. Is Ole Miss better than Alabama in 2023? My gut says yes. My head says Nick Saban is really good at this. And he generally doesn't lose to guys that coach with him. But you've got an ex-offensive coordinator for Alabama as the head coach at Ole Miss. You've got the ex-defensive coordinator from Alabama at Ole Miss. They're going to know a lot about the Tide. They're going to know a lot about the weaknesses of those quarterbacks. Not just from what they've seen through 3 weeks, but from detailed up close and personal information. My gut says Rebels. My head says Tide. So I'm taking Alabama, and it's the game that I feel the least good about. Because similarly to Oregon and Colorado, if Ole Miss has the ability to beat up Alabama, they're going to take it. I just don't know that game gets to a shootout, because a shootout would favor Ole Miss. High scoring would favor Ole Miss. But I think Alabama's defense keeps them in the game, cause a mistake here and there, give your offense short fields, or get a defensive or special teams touchdown. I'll say low scoring, tight game, Alabama wins. But I don't feel good about that prediction. Number 14, Oregon State is on the road at number 21, Washington State. Beavers. Done. I'm bullish on Oregon State. I think they're going to be a fun team that, starts like 8-0 and then kind of waffles down the end of the trail there. But I think they'll be fun until late October. And then things don't go so well. Beavers win Saturday. Number 24, Iowa at number 7, Penn State. If you've seen the video of Brian Ferentz, it's AI. He did not tell his detractors to take a ladder and climb out of his ass because they scored 41 points on Saturday. It is not real. Do I wish it was real? Yes. Yes, I do. But it's not. Iowa needs to average 25 points. Not going to get there on Saturday. Give me the Nittany Lions big, emphatic, to the point where people will be talking about them in the same way that they were about Florida State after they beat LSU, and Texas after they beat Alabama. Penn State, in my opinion, looks impressive on Saturday and gets a big, wide win over Iowa. And the final game, primetime on NBC, it's number 6 Ohio State at number 9 Notre Dame. Green jersey game for the Irish. Traditionally, that has not gone well for them. Marcus Freeman is an Ohio State grad. And they played to open the season last year. It was a 21-10 victory for Ohio State, where it was one of those games where Ryan Day said, I'm going to prove something to somebody. I'm going to show that we can run the football. That's great. You got a first-round NFL draft quarterback and 3 first-round wide receivers. Nobody cares if you can run the football or not, but they did, and they won. Traditionally, Ohio State has lost games at home in big-time non-conference matchups and won games on the road. They beat Oklahoma on the road, and then Baker Mayfield got to plant the flag at midfield at Ohio Stadium. When they played USC, I think they lost both of those games, actually, but they lost at home. They played Miami at home probably 10 years ago at this point and lost. It seems as if on the big-time non-conference games, they lose at home and win on the road. I'm going to take Ohio State to beat Notre Dame. I think they've got more talent, and I think when those big games come, there's a different gear that Ryan Day kicks the offense into, both on tempo and then also in just intensity and play calling diversity. And the knock from Ohio State fans is that Ryan Day's not a good play caller, which is ridiculous. He just generally takes what the defense gives him, and you can't go broke making a profit. But they don't like that. But I think Ohio State's more talented, and there's a different intensity in those big games. So I'll take Ohio State. I don't think that eliminates Notre Dame from college football playoff contention. However, I saw earlier this week where Urban Meyer had said the non-conference schedules for Michigan and Georgia should be a detriment, not a positive. They should be knocked for their bad non-conference schedules. And I think he's right. And I think you should reward tough non-conference schedules. I think Ohio State should be rewarded for going to Notre Dame, and I think Notre Dame should be rewarded for wanting to schedule Ohio State. But when the college football playoff was first announced and somebody said, hey, this is going to lead to more high-profile, tougher non-conference matchups, and schools will be rewarded even if they lose, Bob Stoops said, I'll believe it when I see it. We haven't really seen it yet. So I think Notre Dame or whoever loses is not eliminated from college football playoff contention. You just got to win the next 8 in a row. Easier said than done. But I look for kind of a high-scoring matchup that gets into the 30s for both sides on Saturday between Ohio State and Notre Dame. So those are my predictions. Want to hear yours? You can tweet us at Saturday Glory. You can tweet me at Garrett Seawright. Drop a comment on the video. Let me know who you think wins: FSU, Clemson, UCLA, Utah, Colorado, Oregon, Ole Miss, Bama, Oregon State, Washington State, Iowa, Penn State, and Ohio State, Notre Dame. It's going to be a fun, big, prime, packed weekend of college football, and we'll be back on Sunday to recap it with you here on the Daily Huddle with Saturday Glory. Again, hit the subscribe button, give the video a thumbs up. It really helps. And if you're listening on the podcast, drop a 5-star review. That goes a long way in helping as well. So we'll recap on Sunday. I'll see you then. here on Saturday Glory and the Daily Huddle podcast.